Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. Victory Monday. Celebrate! The first of many to come for the 2025 season as the Washington Commanders defeat the New York Giants 21-6 on Sunday afternoon. It was a quote-unquote sloppy contest by the Commanders. Nonetheless, they were victorious. We'll talk about all that transpired yesterday. I had keys to the game, as I always do with this team. And so we'll go over the keys to victory, talk about what the team was able to accomplish and what they need to improve upon. But seeing the team out on the field for the first time in 2025 as a whole was so fun. And seeing the crowd reaction and response was outstanding. It felt like a sellout. It felt like we dominated the crowd, that there weren't as many Giants fans in the stands. And the Tana Man went into the Ring of Fame. I had a chance to watch the ceremony at halftime. That was dope. And so all good vibes. Now let's talk about what they did, because this is going to be a quick turnaround this week. You know, normally we get to bask in the glow of a victory for a few days until Wednesday. And, you know, then we start to turn our attention to the opponent. We got a game on Thursday. As DQ said yesterday, if you didn't see it, you should go watch it. It was a quick clip, but he basically told the team, you know, get a good sleep because tomorrow's Wednesday, right? Tomorrow's Wednesday. So it's a quick turnaround, and then we'll be playing the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football, the first Amazon Prime game of the year. Looking forward to that. Bart Scott, can't wait. Let's talk about the 21-6 victory over the New York Football Giants, however. And we're going to start with the offensive keys to victory. The first thing that I said was win up front and protect 5. And I gave them a full check mark for that. I thought we dominated up front. We rushed for 220 yards on 32 carries, 7 yards a pop on the ground. Jaden was sacked 3 times, but probably 2 of those sacks were legitimately on him. He could have gotten rid of the football. He just held on to it way too long, and he even admitted that he could have been better in some of those situations. So I actually thought they did a really good job of protecting him. I thought Cliff did a really good job of calling a game that allowed him to get the ball out of his hands quickly in certain situations, so he didn't have to hold on to it, keep the Giants off balance, also using him as a runner. And then every running back that touched it, whether it was Jeremy McNichols or Austin Eckler or, of course, Bill, every guy that touched it had an impactful day. And so I thought we dominated up front on both sides of the ball. And I said this was going to be a line of scrimmage game, and I thought they took care of business in that regard. The next offensive key, win third downs in the red zone. And I said I wanted us to be 8 of 14 on third downs. And and so that's over 50%, right? I think that's 57% or so. And then 66% or better in the red zone. All right. So we didn't achieve the third down goal that I set for us. We were 4 of 11 on third downs, which is not nearly the standard. Okay, that's sub 40%, and the league average is roughly 40%. We were above that last year. We were pushing towards 50% on the season, so we were one of the better third down offenses. This was a disappointing effort. Obviously, the penalties really hurt us in this game. I talked about that on the Bleacher Report Quick Hit. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, check it out. But I talked about the good and the bad from the game on Sunday, and that was one of the things that I did not like was the third down efficiency. But again, a lot of that was hurt by the penalties that the Commanders had. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But they did achieve the 66% or better in the red zone, which is the most important stat, really. If you're not turning it over and you're taking care of the football, what are you doing in the red zone? We got in the red zone 4 times. We scored 3 touchdowns, and that you're going to win a lot of games doing that right there. 75% conversion rate in the red zone. That'll get it done. So in that regard, have credit for the Commanders because they did not achieve the third down stat, but they did get it done in the red zone. End drives with points, preferably touchdowns. Again, this felt like a half-point type of ordeal, because when they did get down there, as I just referenced, they scored touchdowns. We did not kick a single field goal. The problem was we didn't finish drive with points. So I was pleased that when we did have an opportunity to finish a drive with points, it was a touchdown. It did, however, suck that when we got, and the only reason we were 3 or 4 in the red zone is because the last drive of the game ended up being in the red zone, if I'm not mistaken. The last drive of the game ended up in the red zone. Or excuse me, the drive before the half, right? When we got down there and didn't get the field goal, right? So that was the one drive that didn't result in any points. So every drive that we had the opportunity to score, when we got into scoring range, we finished it with the touchdown. So except for the drive before the half. So you want to be more effective and efficient with the drives that you have. I think we had 10 possessions in the game, and you would like to see us, score 6, 7 times in the game like we did last year. That was our thing. We didn't do it in this game, but we did finish those drives that we did have a chance to put points on the board with touchdowns. So half credit there. And then the last offensive key was limit the miscues and mistakes. It's week 4 of the preseason, essentially is week 1 of the NFL now. And so you're going to have mistakes, right? The biggest thing that they couldn't afford was turnovers. And I'm so pleased that they didn't turn the ball over, because if you wanted the Giants to have a legitimate shot, turning the ball over was going to be the way, because I always call that the great equalizer. It's the one thing that you can't account for that can swing the momentum of a game, that can take a team that is not as talented and give them a shot against a team that is superior. And so we couldn't afford the mistakes, but the turnovers was the real key. We didn't turn it over, but we did have penalties. And I said, limit miscues and mistakes. And I listed a bevy of items that I would like to have seen us avoid. Penalties, we had 12 of them. Drops, we had about 4 or 5 of them, it felt like, in this game. Turnovers, we avoided that, and that's what probably allowed us to win the game comfortably. And then missed assignments. There weren't too many of those missed assignments, but we did have a punt blocked. And that was almost like a turnover. The good thing was it didn't go backwards. It didn't go sideways. It went forward still. It was partially blocked because, again, that could have given them tremendous field position. It could have turned into a touchdown. It could have been a totally different game. That's something that we cannot have moving forward. That has got to be tightened up. I knew Abdul Carter is a handful to deal with, but Ben Sinnot's got to be better in that situation. He almost blocked about 3 kicks in the game, did Abdul Carter. Like, Ben Sinnott was getting his ass whooped by Abdul Carter in block protection coverage. It was pretty rough. But with that said, we didn't limit the miscues. It's why the Giants didn't get blown out by 5 touchdowns in this game. Instead, they only lost by 2 scores, basically, which is frustrating because we were probably 30 points better than them in this game. And because of the penalties, because of the drops, because of the mistakes, they were allowed to hang in a game they had no business being in. So I couldn't give us any credit here. This was not, and again, Jaden termed it a sloppy game. I said the same thing when the game was done. That was a sloppy performance, but a win is a win in the National Football League. You take it any way that you can get it. So you go from the offensive keys to the defensive keys, and spoiler alert, they did really well on the defensive side of the football. So stop the run, all caps, was the first defensive key. And boy, did they ever. They set the tone early. They set the tone often, stopping the run. Kinlaw blew up the first play, got in the backfield. From that point, it was on, and they never stopped being dominant up front. I still have questions about the perimeter, because the 2 best Giant runs from a running back both occurred out on the perimeter of the defense. So I'm still looking at the perimeter and saying, can we get better at defending perimeter runs? But you can't run up the middle against this defense. It's just not going to happen. And even some of the runs that they tried to get to the perimeter, guys were blowing it up. I thought Jacob Martin had a good setting of the edge on one play that just blew the whole thing up. Dietrich Wise did the same thing. You saw Kinlaw do that as well. So not every perimeter run was successful, but their 2 best runs were out to the perimeter. Still something to keep an eye on, but we dominated against the Giants running backs. The Giants had 15 carries for 30 yards on the ground. The bulk of the yards that they got on the ground in the game came from Russell Wilson, who had, I think it was 6 carries or 8 carries for 48 yards. He had more yards than the running backs did combined in the game. So we dominated up front and stopped the run. And so obviously we got the full point there. The next defensive key, win the early downs to force third and longs. And I wanted it to be 3rd and 6 or more. And we consistently stopped the Giants on the early downs, and we made it hell for them on 3rd down. Now, they got into some manageable 3rd down situations and still weren't able to convert. The Giants were 4 of 16 on 3rd down. What that says to me is that you put them in some tough spots on 3rd down by winning 1st and 2nd down consistently. And some of their conversions came when it was 3rd and 12. One of the conversions was 3rd and 12, and we played so far off that they were able to throw a Wan'Dale Robinson, slant, and he was able to get the first down. Or I think he ended up short by like a half yard, and they ended up quarterback sneaking it on 4th down. So I just thought we did a great job on 1st and 2nd down, shutting down the run, forcing incompletions. If he threw something short into the flats, we rallied and tackled. They didn't get a lot of yards. We were excellent there. So, of course, a full point for that one. Next defensive key, slow down Malik Neighbors. I wanted him to have less than 85 yards and no touchdowns. This was the one defensive key that I wasn't sure we were going to be able to achieve, but I set the goal anyway because I have high aspirations for this defense. You know how I feel about the secondary and how good I think they're going to be. This had nothing to do with the pass rush. This had everything to do with, I think that both guys on each side and the guy in the slot all can cover, and I'm not afraid. We don't have to travel with anybody. We don't have to, have a star corner following someone around. We got dogs on both sides of the field, and we got a pit bull in the slot, right? So I felt like wherever Malik went, he was going to be covered by someone competent. And they proved me right in week 1. And now some of it did have to do with the pass rush, because there was one play in particular I can think about where Malik was open on like a bench route, and Russ gets clobbered. I mean, we kicked his ass yesterday. I know he woke up sore this morning, but they're running a bench route, and Russ is trying to get it to him, and he just gets devoured. I mean, he gets pummeled on this play, and he can't follow through. And the ball kind of sputters out there, falls at his feet, doesn't make it far enough. And if Russ is able to step into that thing confidently and throw it, it's going to be a completion more likely than not. So, and I want to say that was Javon Kinlaw who just buried him on that play, right? We just destroyed Russ yesterday. So got to credit the defensive line too for making things tough. But ultimately, it was good coverage down the field, all across the board. Marshawn with the knockaway down the field. Mikey broke one up in the end zone. You had Trey Amos on the right sideline. Malik has his hands on it, and Trey reaches in between his hands and scrapes it out, right? And so each of those guys made plays against Malik Neighbors in the game. And so hats off to them for not allowing him to get 85 yards. He only had 71 yards in the game, right? He only had 71 yards. And not allowing him to find the end zone, right? That was so huge because they got down there a couple of times. Right, they got down there point blank range a couple of times, and they couldn't get it in, and they couldn't get the ball to Malik Neighbors. So that was huge, man. Almost counts as 2 when you do something like that against a premier wide receiver in the league like Malik Neighbors. And then finally, the last defensive key: sack Russell Wilson at least 3 times and force at least 1 turnover. So I'm going to be a little bit lenient on this because the pressure rate was so high. We only recorded 2 sacks on the day, but it felt like 6 because of the amount of pressure he was under. The duress that he faced all day was so problematic and impactful that it felt like the equivalent of like a 6-sack game. Also, we technically did force a fumble, we forced a fumble of Russell Wilson. We did not recover. And we forced an interception that should have counted, but we did not have that be recorded because of the penalty on Bobby Wagner for roughing the passer. So technically they got us the 1 turnover, but not technically. They did get a turnover, but technically it didn't count because of the roughing the passer. And then we did get 2 4th down stops in the red zone. So 1 didn't count because of a hands to the face penalty. You see how these penalties can be problematic. And the other was at the end of the game to preserve essentially the victory comfortably 21-6. So um, I, I thought they were phenomenal up front. And so I'm going to give them full credit for this because they really harassed Russ despite not hitting quite the benchmarks that I had set for them. They pretty much exceeded my expectations in this game. So when you look at the defensive keys, all four were met, and they were met pretty much with flying colors and passed with flying colors. Meanwhile, on the offensive side, we came away with 2 out of 4 points possible for a grand total of 6 in week 1. And I've always told you that anything above 4, in a half is usually a winner chicken dinner. You're going to win a lot of games if you can get anything north of 4.5 points during the keys. Now, anything in that 5 to 6 range, you got a legitimate shot of winning, and you probably should win the game. Anything above 6, if we don't win, something went catastrophically wrong, right? Because I set these keys specific to the opponent, knowing what we are, what they are, what we need to do, how we got to stop them, how we got to execute. And a lot of these don't change from week to week, but certain ones do, right? Like every week you want to win third downs in red zone on offense. Every week. That does not change, right? But some weeks it may be, hey, this team doesn't, like if you're playing Tampa Bay, you're not going to run the football. So now you got to be extremely effective as a passer in that game because they're just not going to give it up on the ground. And you have to know that. And so it'll change from week to week. We knew we could run the ball against the Giants. We knew we had to establish the line of scrimmage on both sides, and we did that. That was one of the biggest keys to the game, and they executed. So great job. And Commanders are now 1-0, but it's a quick turnaround. And the Green Bay Packers were very impressive in week number 1. So we're going to talk about them very, very soon on this program, as early as tomorrow. More likely than not, we'll have to start turning that page to the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football. But let's get to in other news, where we heard from head coach Dan Quinn on his Victory Monday presser. We'll talk about what was said there. But before we do that, we gotta talk about the snap count. So let's talk about snap counts for both teams. But before we do that, let's get a word from our sponsor of this video, Sleeper. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper. So this is fresh off the presses. I did not know they were going to do this today. I probably should have thought about this, but they just put out an injury report for today. Again, today they just simply had a walkthrough. There was nothing going on. They had a game yesterday. They did not actually practice today, but would there have been a practice? This is what it would have looked like. So I'm going to read it to you. We'll obviously have a visual of this tomorrow because they will actually have practice tomorrow, but Tressway back, he would not have practiced today, right? DMP is what he was listed as. So again, this is on you. This is charged to your account, Ben Sennett. You got him lit up yesterday and he got up slow. This is on you. This is charged to your account. Get your ass in gear. Noah Brown, knee, limited. Austin Eckler, shoulder, limited. I know the play that happened on too. You saw when it happened. He was a warrior yesterday. John Bates, shoulder, full. Jaden Daniels, right wrist, full. I think I saw the play where that happened. Deron Payne, calf, full. And Dietrich Wise Jr., knee, full. Again, keep in mind, if this were a Wednesday, a lot of these guys probably wouldn't have these ailments. because they would have had their proper rest and treatment and they would have been good to go by Wednesday. And so they wouldn't have even showed up on the report. This is strictly because there was a game yesterday. So don't overreact to Jaden's right wrist or react to John Bates's shoulder or Eckler's shoulder. This is strictly a list of guys who woke up sore today. That's what happens after a game on a Sunday. You wake up on a Monday and you feel sore. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that, but just wanted to make sure that I read that injury report because I literally it just came across my timeline, and I wanted to make sure that you guys had caught wind of that, right? Big shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring this stream. You guys have been with me every step of the way with the Sleeper app. It is just incredible. Use my promo code LTN to get you 100% match on a deposit up to $100. I can't say enough good things about the app. In the description of this video, you will find a link. Click that link, use the promo code, get in the game, get off the bench, get in the game, and be a part of this movement. If you're asleep, wake up, because Sleeper is where it's at. All right. So offensive snaps in the game, as you can see, there were 70. Offensive line stayed intact the entire game. I love to see it. All 5 guys played all 70 snaps, and then you got Jaden Daniels playing all 70 snaps. So you should see 6 guys with 70 snaps, which is what you see. All right. Then Terry McLaurin, as customarily done, most snaps by a non-offensive lineman or quarterback with 55. So for anyone that thought, oh, Terry's missed some time, I don't know how many snaps he's going to play, they weren't concerned clearly because he played the most amount of snaps of any non-offensive lineman and quarterback with 55. Just a shade under 80% of the snaps. Debo right behind him with 54 snaps. Zach Ertz, that's a pretty good number for him, 45 snaps in this game. Normally he's in the 30s when you got a game where you have 70 snaps, but he was out there. It's early in the season. I would assume that as the season wears on, that number may come down a bit, but also depending on how the game is going, they may need him out there more, right? John Bates, 37 snaps. Noah Brown, Austin Eckler, both with 33 snaps. That's a good number for Noah Brown in his first game back since the injury. Jacory Crosky-Merritt, Bill with 23 snaps. I expect that number to continue to climb. Even if it's slowly but surely, I expect that number to climb. And eventually, he'll be the one with the 33 and Eck will be the one with the 23. That's how I think it'll eventually go. But for right now, it's a good number for his first NFL game. And he made the most of those 23 reps with 10 of them, being carries and 82 yards being the end result. Jalen Lane, 21 snaps. He was solid in the game. Obviously had the one drop. And that drop was so weird because he dropped the football and then he tackled the guy behind him. Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, it just was so random. You drop the football and then you just turn around and tackle the first guy that's around you. Like, you're not going to catch it. If I can't catch the shit, you're not going to catch it. It was just weird. But then he turns around the very next play and catches, a sit-down route right over the quarterback and then does a great job of getting up the field and getting the first down. So, which DQ talked about. We're going to talk about what DQ had to say here in a bit. Chris Moore. Chris, I want to score more. 19 snaps for the once belittled and beleaguered wide receiver who was called up from the practice squad to be active on Sunday. Shout out to Chris Moore. Jeremy McNichols, 13 reps. Most of those came late in the game, and he finished the game very well. Ben Sinnott, 8 snaps for him. Luke McCaffrey, 5, and Colson Yankoff, 4 snaps on the day. You go from the offensive side to the defensive side. So there were 68 total defensive snaps in this game. As you can see, Quan Martin, Bobby Wagner, and Frankie Louvu played all 68 snaps. Will Harris would have played all 68 as well, except he had an injury and he had to leave the field for 1 snap. So you see who the guys are that they're going to rely on. Mikey Sanders still probably would have been out there for 100% of the snaps as well. But remember, he left the game briefly with the wind knocked out of him. So he missed 6 snaps. So you see the guys that they're going to rely on, that they're going to have out there as the guys that are going to play the vast majority of the snaps this year. Both safeties, both backers, both safeties, both backers, and Mikey Samerstill, your nickel. So Will Harris with 67 snaps and Mike Samerstill with 62. Marshawn Lattimore led all non-safeties and linebackers and nickels with 58 for the boundary corners. He had 58 snaps. Trey Amos had 53 snaps in his first NFL action. Daron Payne led all defensive linemen with 45 snaps. So 66% of the snaps for Daron Payne, and he was very effective. Dietrich Wise and Javon Kinlaw and Dorrance Armstrong all played 40 snaps for 59%. So they talk about rolling with a deep crew, and they weren't bullshitting. You know, they were doing full line changes, right? It looked like, you know, a NASCAR pit crew, or a hockey line change where you just had 4 guys come in, 4 guys sub out, and they kept those guys fresh. And that's the name of the game, is you want a fresh Javon Kinlaw. You want a fresh, because Dietrich Wise, he's going to give you everything he's got while he's out there. He's hustling. He's running as fast as he can. So you got to give those guys a chance to get that win up. And so that's a good number for them. Jacob Martin, I thought he was very effective. 28 snaps. Same with Von Miller, right? Johnny Newton and Eddie Goldman, 26 snaps apiece. Jeremy Reeves, 11 snaps, and he was very effective in those 11 snaps, including the hit on, I want to say it was, I think it was the running back, Tyrone Tracy, out of the backfield, where they were debating on whether it was a fumble or not. It wasn't, but Revo was all over the field. Jonathan Jones, 8 snaps. Noah Igbenogany, 5. It felt like that 5 snaps felt like 55 because they were targeting the shit out of him as soon as he came in the game. Like, I was like, hey, Mikey, bro, I know you got the wind knocked out of you, but I need you to come back, bro. Fast. They're going after they're going after Noah, and they're going after him heavy, bro. Need you back ASAP. Tyler Owens played 4 snaps. They tried to use him as a blitzer. This man got stonewalled by Cam Scatterbo. I mean, Cam Scatterbo blitzed his ass, and Tyler Owens was the one blitzing on the play. Bow! Lit him up, stonewalled him, and he didn't move another inch towards Russ Wilson. So Tyler Owens did play, but he did not make an impact. Jordan McGee, only 2 defensive snaps. This was not a Jordan McGee game. He's going to really come in handy for those teams that, like, literally make it no secret what they're trying to do. Okay, we running football. We're going to get in this big formation. We're going to add an extra tight end on the field. We're going to add an extra, back with the fullback, whatever the case may be. And we making it known we running. That's when he's going to star. But that's not what the Giants were looking to do. So 2 snaps for him and 1 for Percy Butler. So those were your defensive snaps for the game. Now we get to what was said at the press conference by DQ. So DQ led the press conference off by talking about things that he liked. He loved the low red zone defense. Obviously, the Giants were 0 of 2 in the red zone. So, anytime you get a team in there that close twice and they come away with 3 points, really should have been none, because we had a stop the first time and then had the hands to the face penalty. If not for that, they would have gotten 0 points in the red zone. Anytime you come away with stops like that, you got to be pleased with the defensive performance. And he said play style and identity, which that's been a theme with him. Joe Witt Jr. talked about, the thing he loved this summer was that he could see the play style. They were playing fast and physical. And I said, I want to see it. We saw it yesterday, right? Then he was asked about Debo's impact, and he said, that's what I expected. We've coached against him. We know what he's capable of. And you saw what he was able to do yesterday. And, one of the things Cliff kept saying is everybody wants to talk about him as the gadget guy, catching these screens, jet sweeps, etc. And then he scored on a sort of a gadget play. But he said he was more impressed with Debo, the receiver, and didn't know that he was that good as a receiver. We saw it yesterday. His receiving ability was what set him apart from everyone else yesterday. He led the team in targets. He led the team in catches. He led the team in yards. And he was highly effective when the ball was thrown in his general vicinity. DQ also went on to say, hey, he got around 10, 11 touches in the game. When you combine the runs, the catches, and the kickoffs, he's probably closer to like 15 because he had 2 kickoff returns. He had 2 carries and he had 7. So, no, it's still like 11 touches. He had 2 kickoff returns. He had 2 runs. One was negated due to a penalty. And then he had the touchdown run. And then he had 7 catches. So the impact was felt for sure. He talked about Bill's readiness. He said that's the thing that he really was pleased with. Bill was he was prepared. He was ready. He's like, it was his first NFL game. You could tell he was anxious and excited, wanted to get out there, but he was prepared. He was ready for the moment. And when that opportunity presented itself, he took full advantage. He talked about the Micah trade. I didn't know if he would do this or not, but he, was obviously playing the Green Bay Packers. You're not really supposed to talk about other teams' players unless they're up next on the docket. And he talked about Micah, and he said, it was a joy coaching him. He was one of those guys that made you think, you got excited because there were endless possibilities of things you could do with him and where you could play him. And he said he was such a smart player. You could put a lot on him mentally. He would get it. And so he said that he was surprised that they traded him. Weren't we all? So he talked about penalties in the game. He said, I don't love it. I hate. I strongly dislike it. He was like, I can't stand it. Like, we got to be better. And you said we look at all of them. We don't skip over any of them. All of them are important. He said, but I love the resilience that was shown after the penalties. And he gave an example. Zach had a false start, and then he came back and he had the touchdown catch. He said Austin Eckler had a false start, and then he came back and had that play that was huge when we were backed up. I want to say it was like 2nd and 15 or whatever it was. And he catches the ball, makes a guy miss, lowers his shoulder, does a pirouette, still powers forward and gets the first down. So he said he loved the resilience of guys, right? They pick up a penalty, but then they battle back and they make something happen to atone for that mistake. But he's like, we got to eliminate the mistakes, first and foremost. Lessons from week 1. He talked about, some of the things that they did really well in this game and things that they, can learn from. He was really pleased with how they controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football. He was pleased with, the pass rush and how they were able to. He said he was not pleased with Russell Wilson getting out of there and running and using his legs a few times. Obviously, that's something they feel like they got to clean up. He was not pleased with the end of the first half execution. We'll talk about that here in a second. But, he said there were some really good takeaways. But all in all, you get the win and you continue to get better. He said, I expected this to be a little bit sloppy, not necessarily sloppy, but mistakes to happen. I expected mistakes to happen. It's week 1, right? But we got to be better. And he kept saying we got to be better. He talked about Biotish and Dietrich Wise, and he said, Biotish had a tough challenge on his hands with Dexter Lawrence. And Dexter Lawrence, we ain't heard a peep out of him since we got Tyler Biotish. The last time Dexter Lawrence went ape shit on us, we had, what was the name of the damn center we had then? We had somebody ass at center. I don't even think it was Tyler Larson. It was somebody else. It was bad. That was the, Sam Howell. We scored 7 points and lost 14-7. That was the last time Dexter Lawrence got busy on us in 2022, I believe. No, 2023, excuse me. That was the last time he got busy on us. So, ever since Biotish has shown up on the scene, we ain't heard a peep out of that man. I didn't even know he was on the field yesterday, to be honest. That's a testament to Tyler Biotish. And they probably doubled him a little bit too, but Biotish be holding his own against him. And then Dietrich Wise, DQ I love his hustle. And DQ pretty much said that's his favorite. He plays square. He's physical. He sets a physical. Like, he says all the shit that he always says. But he said it was a play that he singled out with Dietrich. And it was the play where they throw it to Malik Neighbors out in the flats. And Quan comes up to make the tackle. but isn't able to corral him. But he does slow him down. And then Dietrich, hauling ass, comes and cleans up the mess that Quan made and gets Malik Neighbors on the ground. And, you can appreciate that type of hustle. I can give you countless examples of him hustling, but he's just such a smart football player. They tried to run a little boot and have Malik Neighbors sneak across the formation, and Dietrich wasn't going for it, and he forced that incompletion. They came with a blitz. Dietrich came free. Dietrich got his hands up. He forced Russell Wilson to drop quarter sidearm, and he pretty much threw the ball into the dirt. And DQ, talked about Dietrich just being so impactful, and he definitely was, despite having the hands to the face penalty. He talked about the end of the half scenario, and he said, that's on me. I got to be better, with the clock management. Can't put ourselves in that situation. We can't go into the half with an opportunity to get points and get nothing because we didn't even get an attempt off. That's on me. We got to be better. And they will be. I'm not tripping about it. Again, I'm just glad that the opponent was the Giants and not, somebody actually good. I don't know if we would have been victorious or not with all the mistakes we made yesterday. He talked about Chris Moore being up. And it did have something to do with, I don't think it had anything to do with Terry. I think it was more about Noah Brown and them just not knowing how many snaps they would be able to get out of him. They might have had a set number, but just in case something went awry with him, they wanted to have Chris Moore up. But they put him out there. And I just went over the numbers and his snap count. He was out there quite a bit. So, and he made a play. So maybe Chris Moore is just a gamer. Like not a preseason gamer, but an actual regular season gamer. Maybe that's who he is. He was asked about the secondary and how he thought they performed, and he said that, they were great, which we all said. And he singled out Will Harris in particular as a guy that he was really pleased with. I was as well. And he talked about that play that I just referenced, the third down, second down tackle he makes on, I want to say it was one of the running backs. I want to say it was Devin Singletary, where he just stones him right in his tracks and drives him back. And it sets up that 3rd and 1 that Dietrich Wise comes screaming off the edge, gets his hands up. Russ tries to drop it quarter sidearm, and it's incomplete. And if not for that square tackle, that physical tackle where there wasn't another inch gained, normally in those situations where you go head on, the guy with the football powers forward and falls for it for the first down. He didn't gain another inch upon contact. He went in the opposite direction, and it was a pretty big hit. And so he basically said, Will Harris is out there. He moving different right now. Line of scrimmage on both sides of the football was something he said that he was pleased with in this game. And I talked to you guys, and I said, this is going to be a trenches game. You want to beat the Giants, beat them in the trenches, and everything else will fall into place. Don't turn it over. And that's what they did. And so he said he was very pleased with the way that they handled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football. Let's see if they can duplicate that feat against a much better, more potent Green Bay Packers offense. And then Josh Connolly Jr., he was asked about him and what he saw on tape for him. And he's basically like, he did a lot of good things. He got beat a couple times. That's part of the growing pains of, being a rookie tackle. Like Jaden told him, they're going to try you, bro. They're going to try you. Be ready. Son, be ready, as a wise man once told me. So he said they are pleased with his improvement, the things that he has done. So just continue to get better, and he's going to have another test on his hands. Like Brian Burns out the gate is crazy work. You go from Burns to now Micah Parsons. It doesn't get any easier. And then after that, it's Max Crosby. So he's got his work cut out for him the first month of the season or so. And then we'll see how he settles in. But DQ's like, he did good, but he can do better. And we expect him to. And we'll see how it goes moving forward. So that was DQ's Victory Monday presser in a nutshell. We are going to get out of here now. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to take our first look at the Packers. We'll go behind enemy lines on Wednesday. and we'll have our game day coverage. I think I'll do a video that day on Thursday, and then which will have my predictions, all that good stuff on it. And then obviously we'll have the game and the post-game show on Thursday night. So this is going to be a very quick, condensed week. Bart Scott, can't wait. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Hopefully I'll see you guys for Monday Night Football overtime. If not, I'll see you tomorrow. Commanders Kings will ride again on Tuesday night, and I'll have more content here for you on the Louie T Network. Until then, you guys have a good one. Take care.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone.